Hello, welcome to Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. I'm joined live by the Twitch chat, as you can see here. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about why do people still hate Age of Sigmar, which is a pretty evocative title. And I hope you can join me in this journey. This isn't going to be like a fully edited video. This is going to be a recording of the stream that I'm going to have with the chat. Because here is a group of people who've spent dozens of hours in the live chat talking about all sorts of stuff, and also me, and I got loads of thoughts on this. Why do people hate Age of Sigmar still? Why do people still hate Age of Sigmar? Well, let me tell you what kicked off this conversation and why I'm bringing it out today. What happened was, yesterday or a couple of days ago, a new PC game was released for in the Age of Sigmar setting, not for Age of Sigmar, in the Age of Sigmar setting, called Realms of Ruin. Now, I have played Realms of Ruin there's like a demo. It's pretty boring, if I'm honest. And also, following up from that, it doesn't look very good. Could I do better? No. I'm not a game developer or a designer. It would look like two stickmen, and none of it would work, and I don't know how to code, so all of it would suck. Yeah, so I can't do better, right? But as someone who plays computer games, I was like, the graphics look a bit old and crap. The game's a bit boring. I don't like it. There you go. Simple. Very easy. Okay? No problem. And, you don't need to have a personal bias when it comes to information like that, because there's just kind of the facts, right? Very simple. However, that is not what happened yesterday. Yesterday, PC Gamer, a magazine which I don't know if they do paid reviews, so I'm not sure. And what I mean by this is I don't think they're independently operated, but like a news report, right? I'm assuming this is a company, and again, I don't know, so this is just a guess. I'm assuming this is a company who just gets paid to write articles for computer game companies. I don't know if it actually has legitimate journalism, so that's not really the point, if this makes sense. The point is that they did a review of Realm of Ruin, and you'll be like, okay, they're going to go into the details of this. They're going to go into the details of why they like it, why they don't like it, what it's like to play as a game. However, and problematically, that is not the case of what happened. That is not the case at all. So this was, I don't know who this was written by. It's not really important, although I'm sure some people will be annoyed by whoever wrote it. Okay. So let's read the review. Or let's read elements of the review. Realms of Ruin, an overly simplistic RTS that focuses on low unit count skirmishes, definitely evokes the spirit of Age of Sigmar, which is unfortunately the worst version of Warhammer. What an incredibly solid start. Immediately, because if you were a fan of the setting, and again, they're not trying to advertise the game, right? They're not trying to advertise the game. They are just giving a review, whoever this person is, right? But what an immediately bad start. Because from the off, settings are subjective. They are. A good example would be as a fantasy fan, as long-winded as it was, I quite like the Wheel of Time universe. I like the world building that we saw inside of it. Was it as elegant and as well written as, I don't know, something about Raymond D. Feist? No, of course not. It wasn't, but it was good and I really liked it. But I definitely just could never get on board with the world that I don't know. Which ones I don't know. There were some fantasy authors, big fantasy authors, whose worlds I just couldn't get on with. I would pick them up, and I would and the reason I can't remember them is because I couldn't remember who they are. I read the first book, and you're I don't really get the world. And that's okay, because some settings aren't for you, and they're much loved settings, if that makes sense. Some people will love a setting, and some people will like a different setting. It's kind of the point of what settings are like, right? However, this guy has strong facts. I agree. However, it's just the worst version of Warhammer, which is just categorically not true. Categorically not true. As we all know, the worst version of Warhammer is and will always be whatever the hell Dreadfleet was or ship battles. I like the film Master and Commander, and I will always enjoy Master and Commander. Oh my god, we've got a statement. Oh my god. We can read that later. This is going to be so fun. I'm excited. Okay, right? But I'm never going to, be like, oh, I can't wait to play with little boats. Come on, right? Yeah, that's right. I'm coming for that's the worst Warhammer, right? That's, okay, the worst one. It's like Dreadfleet. Whatever any of it is, it sucks. Okay. Right, so he starts off with an initial shot at Age of Sigmar. It's far more forgiving than it is grandiose, old world counterpart. Now, if you would like a more kind of reasonable review, I did What is Age of Sigmar as a YouTube video, and I would encourage you to go check it out. I'll include a link to it down below if you want to go check it out. But I did a review of Age of Sigmar, and I talked about this. Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and don't forget, in the past week, I've started an entirely independent YouTube channel called Squarebased, specifically to talk about the old world and create content for the old world when the game gets released, and leading up to that release. That's how much I'm excited about the return of the old world. That doesn't mean that Age of Sigmar is a bad setting, and it also in no way defends the old world from being literally fantasy Europe, right, with all of the racism included. All of it, right there. So I'm assuming this person is I like grandiose old world counterpart. He kind of loves casual racism. And that's okay if he kind of loves casual racism. For him, I personally think that's fucked up. But again, I'm not saying that's a fact. I just think that's fucked up. That's how he feels. It's weird. It's kind of weird. That's it. Without recognizing that. That's really weird. Anyway. Okay, then it's grandiose old world counterpart to Warhammer, but only a fraction as satisfying or interesting to play. Okay, I guess it's talking about the game, not the actual games, right? Clumsy movement and baffling hands-off approach to combat consign Realms of Ruin to the ever-growing graveyard of mediocre Warhammer games. Now, that is true. There are loads of mediocre Warhammer games. That's because Games Workshop have a terrible licensing strategy. Terrible. And also, they're not very protective of their IP, other than if you try to 3D sculpt something. What they're trying to do is make money. Mobile gacha game, you got it. Yeah, absolutely no problem. And they will pump them out as they've been doing, right? Okay. Old World Blues. Aesthetically, Realm of Ruin looks like a real game of Age of Sigmar. Sparse smears of terrain and wide open battle maps to capture the too large 6x4 foot play space of the war game. So I've got Blue, thanks for resubscribing. Loads of love to you. So, important things to know. Number one, he's already got the board size wrong. That's super important to know. Number two, he's obviously never played at my venue, where the terrain, I think, is fantastic and is quite heavy. Also, because of the way that you move models in Age of Sigmar, which is on round, individualized bases, versus on trays, you can have more terrain that's more functional because trays don't work well with large terrain. I should know. I play both games. Very easy. Okay, so he's already got that wrong. All right, and you'll be fielding armies that are roughly the same size and composition you find in Age of Sigmar's army books. The narrative centers, which is not true either, the narrative centers on a beaten-down Dawnbringer Crusade regiment of the Stormcast Eternals. Stormcast Eternals don't have a Dawnbringer Crusade. That's not how it works. Stormcast Eternals sometimes escort Dawnbringer Crusades, so that's also already wrong. Invading the death and destruction-laden realm of Gur to secure powerful blah blah blah. If you've ever glanced at a fantasy story sideways once in your life, you can figure out the rest. How can you say if you've ever read a fantasy story you can figure out the rest and say I love the grandiose old world counterpart? What the fuck? That's so crazy. The biggest issue with Realms of Ruin is fundamental to Warhammer Age of Sigmar. The rebooted fantasy setting of the Mortal Realms is exceedingly dull. Listen, now, immediately people listening to this are going to be like, Rob, you're such an Age of Sigmar stan. Okay, let's talk about some bits immediately. I think Stormcast are lame. And if you've engaged with any of my content, or, like in the past several years, or if you've even watched anything recently, or if this is the first time, I want you to know, statement of intent, Stormcast Eternals are super lame. They're narratively, they do have some very interesting stuff with like the loss of their soul and mind, and the fact that they're already stolen souls in the first place. Like, you know, co-opted and also like engendered into a war against maybe a choice of their own, like, which is kind of like really interesting when compared to like the military industrial complex and some other elements as well, you know. And then also, you know, like, and 40k has those same similarities, but ultimately they suck. The armor looks lame. Like, there are some models that look kind of cool, you know, like, but most they suck, and the best way that they've been able to make them look cool is stick them on dragons. But that doesn't mean Age of Sigmar is in any way dull. Okay, it just isn't. There are there isn't. There are fish elves. There are elves riding on turtles and sharks. That can't possibly be dull. There are kangaroo men, like mountainous creatures. There are sky pirate dwarfs. Are you kidding me? Pirate dwarfs in the sky. Like, that's just like if you're 12, that's very exciting. If you're an adult man who still, for some reason, thinks like a 12-year-old, it's still very exciting. Okay? And then there's lots of nuanced story building as well, like we've seen recently with the Cities of Sigmar stuff, which has got some great kind of side conversation. But, like, Cities of Sigmar stuff, if anything, should be like the benchmark of what Sigmar the setting should be. They give us a more based and realized kind of like level for like the craziness, but the craziness is crazy. Even the vampires are crazy, like a half demon. It's not dull, not by any stretch of the imagination. Like, it just isn't. Right, and to say that it's dull is to have paid zero attention to any of it on purpose, right? It really, really is. Okay, like, yeah, and that's not to include all, like, and sure, is it crazy? Is it zany? Is it too much? Like, there's some really good conversation around, is it too much? Like, do we need the humans to be a counterpoint to the craziness, the actual god of death running around, legions of bone soldiers? Great conversation. We could have that another time, and I'm super keen to have it. I think that'd be really fun. But it's definitely not dull. Dull is a silly word to use by a silly, silly person. Okay, and I did talk about this again in my video where I talked about it. Thank you to an anonymous gift subscriber to donating 2 gift subs. Oh my god, amazing. And I did talk about this. By destroying the old world, which is just Fantasy Europe, the authors and the creators for Age of Sigmar have been allowed to develop their own fantasy. And sometimes, like with the Lumineth Realm Lords, we did see them go back and be like, okay, if we're going to reimagine the High Elves, what's our best version of High Elves? And for, you know, we got Dawn Riders and Spearmen and Archers, and you're like, okay, it's High Elves. You know, it's just Age of Sigmar High Elves. And then they were like, but what if we also stick them on kangaroos? Okay, wasn't expecting that. That's pretty nuts. Wasn't expecting that at all. All right, what if we made suits of armor that contained no person, just an animated? Okay, this is very interesting. You know, and they've explored it. They've created their own actual fantasy and IP. Yeah, how about a big cow? How about that? How about silly large hats? They've started to create their own IP, and I've said this before. By function, because they're not relying on what the old world was, they've been allowed to be braver with their IP. Or more creative with their IP, but because they don't have to sit back on what their IP, like they're not just trying to create a fantasy game. Like when someone makes a new 40k game, they're like, well, new space game. It's just got 40k orcs in every time, right? It's always. But these guys are like, I'm just gonna do something completely different, and weird, and it's super weird, right? Anyway, so the reboot fantasy set in the Mortal Realms is extremely dull. That's wrong, especially in contrast to the visually stunning old world. Bro, the visually stunning old world, yeah, like, until the new old world is coming out, it's like generations old if you're talking about miniatures. And if you're talking about the art is just Fantasy Europe. It's cool. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm stoked on Warhammer Fantasy Battle art, but they're both good. That's so easy to say. They're talking about Total War here. Oh, the Total War series. Oh, okay. Total War series is good. Yeah, the game looks cuck. This game, Mortal Realms, feels cuck. And looks cuck. Whatever it is, looks cuck. Which is fair because graphically it blows the game away. Oh yeah, Total War looks amazing. Total War looks so good. Like, it's legit. Like, again, if you've never watched the show before, I'm a huge Total War stan. I love Total War. Whatever Creative Assembly are doing right now seems crap. Treat your employees better. Pay them more. I hope everyone unionizes, and I hope the execs get fired. Okay? That's a weird advert. Close that. Right, okay. For those unfamiliar with the difference between the old world and mortal realms, imagine if everything you like about the Total War Warhammer got sucked into a portal. This really did happen into the lore. Not only in some cases it went through a tunnel through space, actually. And then a wizard turned everyone who ever lived into a League of Legends champion. Also not true, it was a dragon. It's so high gloss, so bereft of any characteristic Warhammer edge and grit. Okay, Blood Bowl, the edge and grit of Blood Bowl, right? If Warhammer Fantasy 40k are punk and death metal, then Age Sigmar is Imagine Dragons. Number one, like, trying to write yourself a new Nickelback joke isn't funny. Imagine Dragons make some bangers. Like, is it my music? No. Does it make people happy? Yeah. Just keep their name out your mouth. You don't need to come for them. They didn't do anything wrong. Okay? That seems rough. That just feels like middle-aged man knows a band to say a mean thing about. That's what that sounds like. It does not sound like an adult, like, having some actual input. Okay? Right? And 40k is no longer punk. Like, we're all, like, me and other people are still in love with the idea of the, you know, ironic take that 40k is in its, like, review of fascism. But right now, 40k, especially the Marines, are sold as superheroes. They're on that MCU tip, trying to make them out to be the superstars that they are. And while the, I guess, art, although not the modern art of Space Marines, is fairly grimdark, and again, not the modern version of it, I would say that 40k is really, you are absolutely right. 40k is punk and death metal in both that when those punks got older, they turned into right-wing reactionaries, and in death metal that it's completely performative. That's what death metal is. Death metal is just a music not trying to be good with people pretending to be ghosts or, you know, whatever. And I'm glad Louise isn't here to hear me say that, right? It's just performative. So you're right. 40k is punk and death metal in that it is aged and pointless. And then the other one is completely performative and with lacking any substance, right? Get ready. Ghost is great, to be honest. Ghost is great, but you know what I mean. Okay. Okay. If Warhammer, like, and also it's such a, like, I really like, it's so funny. Death metal is so funny. Shut up. I'm also, just for context, again, no one's listened to me. I ran a rock club and was a DJ for 15 years. I ran the biggest rock club in my city for 3 years. So I feel like I've got some background on music as well. So it's a shit-taking addition. And Imagine Dragons are fine. Like, they're just not my cup of tea. Right, this is still the case with Realms of Ruin, especially in contrast to contemporaries Darktide and Total Warhammer 3. Darktide looked amazing. Darktide is black metal. It's so good, right? Darktide is black metal in that all it is show. You play Darktide, you're like, oh my god, this looks amazing. Like, oh my god, look at the stage set for that black metal band. That looks amazing. There's like upside down crosses and there's flames and there's skulls. And you're like, oh my god, they're like absolutely 100% one for one. Yeah, you're like, is there anything in here that you could enjoy? Absolutely not. Useless and terrible. Darktide, like, no progression, no story, nothing of interest, nothing to sink your teeth into. Anyway, and the Total Warhammer 3 is obviously boss. So good. Soak you in a rich atmosphere, whatever. The campaign is serviceable when not bogged down by atrocious technical issues. This is fine. All of this is fine. Mission objectives are varied and offer unique twists on the take and hold gameplay structure, like having simultaneous... I don't care. It's an inoffensive modern RTS tutorial campaign, but progress, erasing crashes and boring narrative where you can see the end from 100 miles away, make Realms of Ruin tedious. That's fine. I've got no problem with that. That's fine. That's a review of the game. Realms of Ruin takes clear inspiration from 2009's Warhammer 40,000 Dawn of War 2, one of the best Warhammer games, but confuses that game's success at streamlining with oversimplification. Dawn of War 2's combat was massively scaled down from most RTSs, so there's some other stuff in it. In stark contrast, Realms of Ruin's upgrade system is nothing interesting. Combat borrows a mechanic from Warhammer's tabletop game, ends up poor fit for RTS, which is fine. Two armies charging the Realm of Ruin, winds up looking more like a tavern brawl in the Renaissance. But yeah, it looks shit. That's fine. 40k is a butt rock in the sense nothing but rock radio stations. 40k is dad rock now. Like, and listen, I got zero problem with dad rock. I even stray into country sometimes, and like I'll love me some Sturgill Simpson, and I'll hang out. Yeah, like do you know what I mean? I'll absolutely tailgate at a country show. There's no problem with that. It's just like I got zero problem with those things. But 40k is now dad rock, and anyone says it's not is bad. Anyway, since we need units university, okay, anyway, with our armies, we're just going to keep turning. Realms ruined. Armies do at least retain their tabletop flavour, my runaway favourite being the Forces of Tzeentch and Demon of Change. The emphasis on streaming range attacks, screening with cheap cultists and heavy demons, an unforgiving economy has you racing to recruit flamers of Tzeentch as early as possible. Two of the four factions, the Horde like Nighthaunt of Nagash and the tricky Uruk-hai-inspired Cruel Boys, Orcs didn't grab me quite the same way, each faction favours a specific playstyle, and Realms of Ruin's awkward movement mechanics did these unorthodox armies which rely on tight formations and ability to micromanage no favours. Even Warhammer's lamest setting still has some cool stuff going on. Like, you can just say it's the lamest setting, but you don't have any, you've come in swinging for no reason, and you've never watched a Dawn Stir video. Like, that's how you know. Like, my line for if anyone is remotely, like, knowledgeable in the sphere of Age of Sigmar, lore, background, or even as to whether or not it's worth engaging with, is you've watched the Dawn Stir video. And if you haven't, the greatest Warhammer Age of Sigmar YouTubers ever, watch their content, then you should. Dawn, as you would write it, Stir, stick them together and watch all of their content. It's better than anything I've ever made, and it's so good. And if you haven't watched that, don't comment on Age of Sigmar, because you don't know what you're talking about, right? Even Warhammer's lamest setting still has some cool stuff going on, like the crunchy combat animation. Stormcast Eternals are quite literally Space Marines for Warhammer 40,000, but with magic. Throw their whole bodies into the hammer and axe swings, tossing out elbows and fists on the backswing. The Nazgul-esque Nighthaunt are a vexing fog of death essence. My favourite was by far and away Lord of Change, a massive demonic cockatrice that casts waves of iridescent magic in tsunami-sized waves. Realms Ruin also has the Army Painter. There's options for the official alternative army schemes featured in each respective faction. Anyway. I found myself most engaged in the conquest mode. Zoomed out. It's been particularly combat emanations. Okay, anyway. So that's the review basically. The review is like it starts out with some pretty strong stuff. We have had a statement actually from the author. I take an odd amount of pride in having written such an incisive, cutting article that people visualize the writer as 50-something netbeard instead of a non-binary turbo goth. Perfect. Well, see, that's how I pictured you. But now I know you're a non-binary turbo goth. I know that you are absolutely into performative death metal. It's just a fact. Like, now I know it's all about like performance versus actual input. So thanks for that. I pictured them as a dick, and I'm right. Said someone in the chat, not me. Okay, so let's talk about why people hate Age of Sigmar, because I think the chat can now say why they think people hate Age of Sigmar. Also, I encourage you watching this video to also encourage yourself. So could I encourage you to please to write what you don't like about it or what you do like about it? And I'm going to recap thoughts I've had in the past and thoughts that I've had earlier. And it's very simple. When they blew up the old world, which is a setting that I really enjoyed because it's a setting that made sense to me. I've read fantasy books, I've watched fantasy TV shows and movies, I've seen Lord of the Rings, so I completely immediately understood Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Like, I completely understood that, right? And when the old world was destroyed for Age of Sigmar, I was furious. I was emotionally very heavily invested in a game and a system, and they destroyed it, and they took it away from me, and then they gave me something else. And the argument as to whether or not it was good or not good, the setting at launch was not good. Whether or not the game was better or not, the game was just better. Like, that's just, as a gamer, because I am first and foremost a gamer. I play the games. I pick up game systems and I'm like, what are these like to play? For example, the lore for 40k is stunning. The minis are great and the art is wonderful. The way it's currently sold and portrayed is a problem, but I'm a purist. And I'm like, I really like the fact that it's like quite clearly a piss take out of fascism, and you can see that resplendent in even some of the modern work, because while the marketing is definitely done by people who want to sell that, the creators and authors at least understand the setting, and you can read that in the text if you actually read it, which most people don't bother to do. However, as a game, a bit soulless at the moment. My personal experience of having played it just this weekend gone. I think it's not got many rules and it really doesn't represent the background. So there we go. So Age of Sigmar was a better game than the old world of Warhammer Fantasy Battles. It just was for me personally, because of a ton of different reasons. And even now, looking at it, you know, we're coming into the release of the new old world, and they've recognized that some of those elements were wrong and bad, and they've removed them from the game. They haven't just been like, 8th edition, that was perfect, here we go. They're like, no, we've changed some stuff because that sucked. So even the company that made the game have recognized that that's the case, so there we go. So now you've got different ways to play, and different ways to play is always good for the consumer, which is positive. But the launch was a fraught time full of heavy emotion. And I think at that point, you literally had two people. That's what you had. You had people who could recognize that Nickelback made some bangers. And while you can make the Nickelback joke, the Imagine Dragons joke, right? You know, you can be like, I'm just going to jump in on the humor. That people stopped there. They were like, I just don't like Age of Sigmar. You're like, why? Because Sigmarines. You're like, okay. You got anything else? They're like, Sigmarines. Okay. They sound like idiots. Like, that's what they sound like. But a lot of it will be to do with the fact that they're emotionally loaded with feelings that I also had as well. It's taken me a long time. I still don't trust Games Workshop. Why would I possibly trust them? Like, they just blew up in a setting and a universe. Like, and then they lied about it and a bunch of other stuff. Like, why would they, why would I ever trust them? That's super fair. Like, so I don't, right? And why do I continue to enjoy their things? Because I enjoy this, like, the settings, the people who I get to play with, the world building and the other stuff. But for Age of Sigmar, what it's developed into is this stunning game. It's a stunning game, which is really fun to play. It's very easy to pick up and teach new people how to play as well. It's pretty simple. Like, there's no strength and toughness tables. There's no stupid weapon skill, ballistic skill tables. There's just literally, here's a data card, read through the line, do the stuff. Yeah. Is it a Games Workshop level of complicated? Yeah. Is it as good as Legion and Shatterpoint? No. Mechanics-wise. But the setting is developed massively. And the setting has been able to develop, which is what the author took issue with. The setting has been able to develop because of all the people that left. That's the best part. The reason that people hate Age of Sigmar is because they're people who will always hate everything. They are inherently unable to understand change and progression. And if anything, they like being contrary about something. That's what it is. Like, I don't love the Blood Bowl saying. I'm not really much of a sports guy. But I would never cuss out Blood Bowl as a setting in the universe, because I'm like, I don't get it, but I know people love it. They're like, they love the whole thing. They love the background. They love Nuffle. They love everything about it. And, like, it's not for me, and I understand that. But, like, I don't go in and start cussing those things. I always, like, and it's not fair to bring all of your, like, personal emotional problems and bring it to a setting and a fandom. It just seems like a huge mistake. I don't know why anyone would take the time to do that about about what they're trying to create, like, or about what other people are creating as well. That seems like a huge mistake. Anyway, so let me see what the people in the chat are saying. But to kind of like round off my point, Age of Sigmar was launched. I was upset. Those other people are still upset about that. They're still bothered about it now. They're still pissed. But what was important is those people were like me. I was an active purchaser and player of Warhammer Fantasy Battle up until the day it died. Okay, so I was in support of the universe and the setting. I'd be interested to know how many people that take shots at Age of Sigmar are those same people. And I was actively going to tournaments. I was actively talking about it online. I was actively a member of the community helping to grow and propagate Warhammer Fantasy Battle. When it switched, I was pissed, but I didn't let being annoyed like that define me for 8 more years. And while the launch of the actual setting for Age of Sigmar sucked initially, it's been developed to the place where it's actually a legitimately interesting fantasy world. Is it still a bit silly? Probably. Like, for my tastes, probably a little bit silly. But it's all a bit silly until we get used to it. Like, you know. And so, yeah, that's kind of my take. It's become a very well-established, very well-done setting. And if Games Workshop could get over Stormcast and move on to Cities of Sigmar, it would be incredible. That's my take. Rob, the complainers all dump their baggage on AOS and rage quit, as you say. Where do I find my people? The thing about it is the people who are rage quitting and complaining, like, so I have been as enthusiastic about the return of the old world. I'm like, amazing. The IP that I like, that I love inside of Total War have done it really well. The IP that I've loved and that's been able to be kept alive through Total War, I can return to the tabletop and that will be fun. But if you go and watch the most recent show where I talked about movement with Val, we talked about movement trays and how it doesn't work with terrain and a bunch of other stuff and wound, like, you know, how a 30-man unit is just a wound counter for a rule set. You know, it has its own problems as well as it's amazing and good and cool. It's fine. Like, it's just how these things are. Like, but being pissed about it still is so... I mean, not Man of War, though. Fuck Man of War. Is the author an all-one fantasy battle player, or is their perspective purely from computer game side of things? It might be from the computer side game of things, and also, like... I don't know. I don't think... Okay. When they get round to making, if they get round to making, because it is a big if at the minute, if they get round to making the Amazon TV series for, you know, the Horus Heresy or 40k or whatever it's going to be, it's going to be a massive opportunity to fuck that up. Because it's actually quite a nuanced setting. Like, you need to be dark and grim, but you have to, like, otherwise, like, it'll be a depressing 10 hours. If it's like 10 episodes over the course of an hour. Imagine how like darkly depressing you can make that, and also just how ham-fisted you can make it as well. You could make it look really bad, like very bad. So, like, it's unsurprising that a games company that didn't put a lot of money, I guess, into Realm Ruin, I don't know, just like some like opportunistic IP kind of like sell. It's unsurprising it doesn't look good, because it doesn't look good. That's the simple answer. Hey Rob and chat, FFC Warcry Warbox. Okay, thank you, Sophia Kittens, loads of love. Rob, I highly recommend trying the Realms of Ruin single player. The voice acting story are genuinely good. I played the demo for a bit. Everything was slow. It looked a bit crap. I was like, not very interested. Wasn't overly interested in it anyway. I played the Dawn of War 3 RTS. I played that for a bit. It was fun, but it also wasn't very good, so wasn't for it. AOS for a long time, this said in the chat, felt like a setting of concepts, not a world where people lived. It wasn't a setting where you could see yourself, which I think the old world had. It has improved and it's a rich and nice setting now, but we should have more focus on the experiences of people who lived in the world. Also, again, the old world was Europe. Like, when you think Tomb Kings, you think Egypt. So, like, its groundability, or how grounding it is, or how grounded it was, is because it was literally just the world. And in many times, in many ways, a racist take on the world. Or at least a problematic take on the world, right? Yeah, old world had to do no world building. It just was the old world. It was just Europe and other continents in fantasy. That's it. A lot of the outrage is probably performative. Outrage gets you clicks, retweets, is the low-hanging fruit of online discussion. That's the other point as well. Age of Shitmar, like, am I right, guys, is low-hanging fruit. It's true. It's low-hanging fruit, and also, you know, it's like, it's the same low-hanging fruit as taking shots at Imagine Dragons and Nickelback. That's what I mean. That's like, that's where it's pitched. It's being pitched at the level of people who all, like, you know, high-five each other like children when they make the same dumb joke. And it's just not very interesting. Like, that's all I'm going to say. I think it's time Frontier have gone from one game studio, so it's like 4 all the games have taken a downturn. Yeah, it wasn't a good game, in my opinion. Old World was Tolkien-derived Eurocentric fantasy for sure. Anyone who says different is absolutely out your mind. And I love that. Don't get it wrong. I love that Old World is a Tolkien-derived Eurocentric fantasy. It's fine. Sign me up. Sell me the minis. Like, I just don't. I'm just not lying to myself on what it is. I thought Games Workshop did something amazing with AOS right up until the point they made the Seraphon book have the exact same MP design as the old Lizardman book. Turns out the issue isn't Warhammer Fantasy Battles or AOS is bad game design. That's super true. AOS is increasingly a really creative space with lots of potential. I never look at 40k stuff and think it's as interesting as a warband with doggos or giant squid. So that's the kind of mainstay. I think Age of Sigmar now being, in my opinion, the most innovative setting that Games Workshop have, and also the most exciting IP that Games Workshop have, is all based around the fact that it has no boundaries. 40k initially had no boundaries. Like, 40k now, unfortunately, is a band. Music is such a good kind of byline to run through this entire show. Like, when a band does really well and they release a new album, almost every time people say, not as good as their old stuff. Not as good as their old stuff. Which is rude. Like, in so many ways, to assume that a band have not put their heart and soul into trying to create either a new sound or move themselves on or learn and grow as who and what they are. In some cases, it maybe isn't as good. But in some cases, it might be better. But it's because it's not exactly that thing you fell in love with. It's not exactly identically that thing. And you just want that same thing over and over again. Like, and it couldn't be a more oppressive mind state to take for creative people. The idea that a band can only play the hits from that one album that was released when you liked them and can't grow as creative people and express themselves in different and new ways is counter creativity. That's what it is. And that's similar to wanting a return to a singular Warhammer Fantasy Battle that looks nothing like. Don't expand on it. Don't change it. Don't do anything new. Yeah, I want exactly that one thing. Just play the hits. Is an incredibly poor mindset for people to take in. Explore that setting. Love that. Develop new things inside that setting. Let's go. Yeah, those are all great things. But for 40k, as a good example, if we lead off with, when they released Votan, they were like, we're exploring the setting. When they do Dark Mechanicum, we're exploring the setting. And that's great. That's really good. But at this point, and I've said this several times on the show, Space Marines are over. You can't make Space Marines interesting again. They've done. Like, they did the whole, we're making Space Marines bigger thing, which got a lot of people hype on Space Marines. And then now, and people will continue to be hype on Space Marines forever, because the same crowd of people that are like, I don't like this thing, I just want the same thing again, will just buy a slightly different Space Marine with a slightly different gun and paint them blue. And that's fine for those people. But I like the creativity and development that you see in Age of Sigmar because it has no rules and boundaries. It has nothing out there, right? And so to criticize its adult setting is insane because it has no rules. And so it can be as wide as you like it. And they have done that, which is fun. Anyway, so that's kind of like the TLDR. So why do people hate Age of Sigmar? People hate it because, I don't know, they're cowards. Like, they don't want to engage with an IP or learn about what an IP is in many ways. And, you know, and it's also really reductive of me. Talking about 40k and talking about only Space Marines, there's so much about 40k that's actually really exciting. So much really good stuff. The Mechanicum is amazing. Like, there's some really... It's some really good stuff. Like in there, in my personal opinion, I think there's some great IP. Gene Stealer Cults, Orcs, loads of IP that they should explore in more detail, in my opinion, because there's so much really fun stuff in there, especially creativity-wise. That's fun. But surely we're just consumers, we must eat what we are given. Not true. Look at fan fiction. You know, 50 Shades of Grey jumped straight out of Twilight fan fiction, and, you know, if it wasn't for Gerard Way, we would never have had Twilight. So let's just never forget how we ended up with 50 Shades of Grey. Darkmaker is so cool too. Shame Games really hasn't explored them much yet, but they will do. They absolutely will explore them. Wookie Barber in the chat. The Horus Heresy book series made the Marines interesting for me. It's cool to see the delving into the personality of Stormcast Eternal Heroes like Ionis and the other 1.0 guys. That's really fair. I personally struggle with the Stormcast characters. I think that they, like Marines, should not be the focus of the setting. Because as soon as you make genetically engineered super soldiers, or, I don't know, lightning-encrusted super soldiers as the focus, it's really hard to create a baseline where everyone else doesn't have to be an insane super soldier or someone in a nameless horde. Like, they could lower the level a little bit, which I think would be really helpful as well. The dreaded soft. There was a band I used to love. One of their albums was massively divergent from their previous work and it split the fan base. It was what they really wanted to make, though. Like, in a band's case as well, why wouldn't you want a band to create the stuff that you want to create? That's the best part. Hamilcar is the best Stormcast character. He's like Aquaman from Batman Brave and the Bold. Okay. Well, there we go. Anyway. So, to kind of surmise, I guess, because I've surmised like 3 times now, and I think I need to surmise why people hate Age of Sigmar. It's just because they're just boring people, probably. Like, and you can not like Age of Sigmar. That's fine. Hating Age of Sigmar to the point where it's become your personality is like so sad for you. So sad. Imagine spending time hating on an IP versus exploring another IP. And also, they're the sort of people who, when an IP is changed, what they're going to do is complain that the IP has changed. You're like, no, you can't change that IP because this is how I like it to be. Therefore, it's literally the death of creativity. That's what it is. And that's why people hate Sigmar, because they probably hate creativity, in my opinion. At least the setting. The game is the game. You like it or you don't like it. That's a mechanics thing. There we go. All right, well, I hope you've enjoyed the video. And chat, thanks for hanging out. There we go.